Welcome to Season 3 of the Moving On Podcast. I'm Jay Norman, and this is my wife.
Hi, I'm Jess Norman.
Babe, did you really think anybody would hang around to listen to a third season?
What is a really good word for the opposite of yes?
My thoughts exactly. And thank y'all for hanging around.
We sure appreciate it.
And on to the show. Hi, babe.
Hi.
How are you today?
Doing so good.
Babe, we made it back in 2 weeks' time like we were supposed to. This is the first in a while.
Because Cambria, Louise, Diane, Elliot is cracking the whip.
She put us on the crunch schedule, did she?
Yeah, I asked her, have me recording every Monday. Don't ask questions. Just make sure I am recording an episode every Monday. So I told her we were recording today, and she was like, oh my gosh, my job is done.
Doesn't even have to worry about it tomorrow.
Right.
So our life is picking back up a little bit of crazy, and basketball going on. And we've had, we're supposed to have 5 games on Friday, and we ended up with just 3 because we have one got quarantined.
2?
One got
3.
quarantined, and the other one, the opposing team got quarantined.
Right.
So that changed, but life has been busy doing that. And things farming-wise are starting to pick up. We're getting close to spring, and talking today with our guest that's here. He's going to think I'm crazy by saying this, but we're going to be planting corn in roughly around 30 days, and that's sneaking up really quick, and fertilizing wheat. We're still calving out a bunch of heifers, and so it's been really crazy. It's been muddy, and it's been wet, but fortunately not super cold, and I can kind of see spring coming and looking forward to it and getting ready for the excitement of planting corn for sure.
Yeah, I'm a mom. I'm a new mom.
Yeah, we have 2 bottle calves. We've lost 2 babies, and we've got 2 bottle calves here, and so that's been an experience for the kids because we've just never really had the opportunity. We had mostly all older cows, and we've just never had any issues, but I don't know. They've got them names, and I'm afraid they're here permanent. I don't know if I'll ever get rid of Roger and Lucille or not, but I hope someday I can cut the feed bill somewhere along the line.
Or the laundry. I'm doing so much cow poop laundry you've never even seen in your whole life. It's worse than having a swimming pool. It's like, go play with the cows, get covered, and you know what? Come back in, change, shower. Well, go play with the cows again, back out, play with the cows, get covered. And
although we're farmers, we weren't really set up to have baby calves here at our house because our house is separate from our farm. So they're in the garage just crapping on everything we use. So it's going to be a great cleanup program when we get them moved out and get them to some grass.
Yes.
So, babe, why don't you tell us how you met our guest today?
I'm so excited. This is going to be so fun. We decided, going way back, to do our podcast. Some folks had come down from Minnesota, I guess. They had done a Pioneer commercial with Jay, and it was just the most fun, interesting, new experience. It was something that kind of drew us in, and that's when we started actually talking about our podcast. So we hired one of the men to be our producer for the first year of season 1. He was our amazing producer. In the very beginning, he said, you know who you should reach out to is a man named Rob Sharkey. And they had worked together, and he had just thought that we would hit it off. I contacted Rob, and he said, please, don't contact me again. And he didn't. How we found each other is just completely meant to be because we love these folks. We had no idea they would say yes to this. I had an entire PowerPoint presentation ready. They did not need it. I am so thrilled that we get to have a conversation with the beautiful shark farming Sharkeys of Illinois. You like it?
I do like it. And so, guys, Rob and Emily Sharkey, thanks for joining us today. And we look forward to this for a while. And tell us what town in Illinois.
Just outside of.
Yeah, we live just outside of Bradford, Illinois. And just I never knew you felt that way. I mean, I'm getting some warm feelings here.
You remember when you said, please don't contact me?
That I do remember. I do remember that. Yeah.
How did you get this number? Remember?
Yeah, I do remember being very upset.
No, Rob took Jay and I in immediately and promoted our tiny little podcast on their podcast. It meant the world to us. And then anything I had editing or audio or anything, I could go to Rob and Emily, and it was a game changer for us. You guys really saved us in that first year. And Rob really just helped us to just calm the hell down. Yeah. Jay didn't need to calm down. I did. That was such a big, I appreciated that so much, Rob, because I probably was freaking a lot of people out in my inner circle. And so they say thank you. I say thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And yeah, I don't think Jay looks like he's too wound up about anything.
No.
Pretty laid back, for sure. So, Rob, I have to ask, being a farmer, we just got through, we always say farming wise and tell what's going on our farm. You're a farmer, and obviously that was my first draw to you was a fellow farmer. Tell us, farming wise in Bradford, Illinois, what things look like and what y'all grow.
Yeah, we are the stereotype of a Midwest farm. We just raise corn and soybeans. We got out of livestock in 2008 and haven't looked back. So right now, the only tractors that are running are basically pushing snow. We're just bringing stuff into the shop, getting ready for spring.
So corn and soybeans here in Texas, that yield can be all over the board. Tell us what that looks like in Illinois.
It's about 600 bushels an acre, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Great job.
Yeah.
Well,
No, we fertilize for 250 on corn, and we shoot for like an 80 on beans. Does not always happen, but I mean that's what we're looking for.
Right. All right. So both y'all's families tied to agriculture?
Yeah, so my family, it was my grandparents. It skipped a generation. I grew up on both my grandparents, my dad's parents and my mom's parents farmed, and they raised Hereford cattle. And my grandpa McManus had some pigs too, but mostly it was cattle. And so I have memories of spending the summers with them and going in the spring and checking the cattle for the new calves and picking out the twins and making sure that everybody was nursing right. And I would stock up his truck every morning with all the hay we needed to go out into the field and feed them. And so I was always trying to save my grandpa. He had bad knees, so I was always trying to get all the gates for him and ride on the back and dump all the hay for him and just do all the running work. So it was fun. I have good memories of being on the farm. That's just the best.
What was his name in?
So my grandpa McManus, his name was Mickey McManus, and then my grandpa's Wilbur was his name. So I spent time with both of them.
Wow.
Yeah. So one was Irish, one was German. So Emily's an angry drunk.
Oh, good for you, Ann.
So tell us about you two. How did y'all meet?
Go for it.
So it was the summer after our sophomore year of high school, and we were both in 4-H, and I was showing my horse. And it was a really hot day, so I had on shorts and cowboy boots, and I was running back and forth to the barns. And Rob was there, and he was showing his pigs. And we saw each other once earlier in the day, I think when we were decorating the building with 4-H, putting up signs and stuff. And I remember thinking he was awful cute, but I had never seen him before, never talked to him. And so then that night at the 4-H dance, he came over and asked me to dance. And I always tease because he could have chickened out and just went for this huge buffet of pizza behind me. But luckily he didn't chicken out. And we've been together ever since. We were 16.
Wow.
That's amazing. And so been together a long time. And I know you told us before 4 kids. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, 4 kids, 21, 19, 15, and 11.
Nice.
Yeah. How about that?
William just graduated from college. He's got a diesel mechanics degree. And Anita, our only daughter's 19, and she's going to be finishing up her second year of college. And then Ian's a freshman this year in high school. And then Stephen, our youngest, is in 6th grade this year. And it's the first year that in, 17 years that I'm not homeschooling. So I don't have anybody at home.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, she did. She got completely out of homeschooling, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And it took forever to send the little buggers home.
Yeah, I got everybody back.
Got out and got right back in.
Yeah, do you feel like we're all going through this, Sam, because you stopped homeschooling? We're all paying for your decision.
Yeah.
He had to make a huge wave to get him back into your house.
That's how she is. I mean, this is what I got to live with.
I'm sorry, Rob. God.
Thank you.
So our podcast is based on faith and grace and a lot of different things that we've gone through and struggled with, and we try to talk to people and tell about the things that happened to us and ways that we've kind of gotten through that. And I know in talking to y'all that early on in your marriage, farming wise, I would say y'all had a pretty tough struggle, and kind of tell us about that and how you dealt with that and where it kind of sent you in life.
Well, so I've got 5 older sisters, right? So it's almost like I always knew what I was going to do. I was going to come back to the farm. And I did, and basically like a hired hand role for my dad. And after 2 years of that, you want to get out on your own. So we decided to go ahead and invest in raising hogs. We were raising feeder hogs. And we went heavy. And that was 1998, which was the record low in feeder hogs. So we lost everything. I mean, money we didn't even know was around, we lost it. So we were completely broke.
Shoot.
The banker, he told us that we needed to file for bankruptcy. But we kind of knew that wasn't for us. And the whole thing was, during this, I was in a dark place because I was depressed, because here I'd failed. I'm 5th generation farmer. I thought I was going to be the end of it. Was having an identity crisis, but we were still newlyweds. We hadn't been married 3 years yet. So I wasn't really explaining this stuff to Emily. I wasn't telling her. I was just kind of keeping it all bottled in.
Yeah, and I was playing polo at the time. I was training polo horses, and so I was gone during the day, and I was traveling on weekends, and I was riding 15 horses a day. And so I wasn't on the farm during the day to see what he was going through. Mm-hmm. Like he didn't share. I didn't know he was in such a dark place. I mean, I knew times were hard and we talked about it, but I had no idea it was that bad. And I never looked at it like it was his fault either. Like I mean, the hog market crashed. So in my mind, I've never understood why that's his fault.
Yeah, which of course is
right.
what I thought. It was the decisions I made. Yes, there was this crash in the market that nobody saw coming, but at the end, it was my mistakes that got us there. Which I still don't fully get that.
Right.
Yeah.
I never have looked at it like it was his fault, but he still does. But yeah.
I think that is hard for us to know when to step in for ourselves, because you reasoned it by, I'm sure he's fine because obviously he knows that this wasn't by his hand, and it wasn't that way. And so that's when that communication has to come. But Rob, when you said identity crisis, I had to go, I'm really impressed with you to even know that term and know that that's what was occurring. I had to go sit in front of a therapist to speak that over me and help. And what she said was so calming was, you're not in a midlife crisis, you're in an identity crisis, and it may be your first, but it won't be your last. And it was really comforting to me to know that what I was walking through was normal, and that there might even be more. That's how common it is. And so how did you get to a spot where you knew how to label it as that?
It's almost like when you're failing at in grade school or high school, and you can kind of just keep that. Well, you used to be able to just keep that to yourself before all the internet stuff. But it's when the report card came and you had to fess up. That's what it was like going to the bank with Emily when I had to admit that there was no way out of this. And once we did that, and once we got home, and once we got talking about it, and once I knew that she wasn't mad at me, she wasn't upset with me, and I was able to just talk about everything that I was thinking and how I wasn't sleeping, it's just like this huge weight that just got lifted. It was such a learning process, not only in farming, but in marriage too, because it wasn't that I was trying to hide stuff from her. I wasn't telling her because I didn't want to put all this stuff on her that I was dealing with. I just wanted to handle myself. I wanted her to be happy, and that definitely was not the way to go.
I feel like that's how the enemy isolates us, with probably telling you she's going to be pissed when she finds out about this, and she probably is going to leave you when she finds out about this. She's not going to respect you when she finds out. We'll be 4 years next month, Jay and I. And I think, Em, you said y'all are 25 this year?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
In June, it'll be 25.
Oh, that's so cool. So we'll be this month. We'll be 4 years. And there was something that I was grappling with for all 4 years. All 4 years that Satan just kept saying, if he finds out that you're grappling with this, he's out. He will leave. And we sat up here in very close to the same spot we're sitting in about 2 weeks ago. And I got so low that I just said, here it is. And I just cried and screamed all of the secrets. And I think that was the change our marriage needed in that moment, was all of the truth to come out and kind of set our marriage free, because he kind of had us in a shackle, like that talk that you had to have so that you could walk forward.
Mm-hmm. Rob, too, when you're talking about being down and being dark like that, how long did that take that to lift? And then I guess looking at it from the man standpoint, just being a fifth generation farmer and admitting any kind of failure, I know that had to be a pretty tough road. Oh, yeah, because you look at all the work that went ahead to get you to where you're at. The 4 generations before me, and my dad was heavy into hogs too, so of course he was struggling. So there was no help. It was basically a deal. We just went to the company. The bank wrote us off. So we went to the companies like the feed company, the soybean meal, everybody we owed money to, and went to them individually and asked if there was anything they can do. And of course, they were getting bankruptcies left and right on them. So they're like, just give us something. Just give us something. So the weight, when we had that discussion that night, the weight of the relationship just was lifted instantly. When we were getting those calls made to the companies, and they're like, yeah, we know. Hey, we will work with you. If you just give us $10, $20 a month, and we'll figure something out. Once they started doing that, that's when kind of the farmer guilt started getting lifted, that, hey, it wasn't just me, and there is a way out of it.
Right.
And I know you told us last night that was one of the things you're most proud of, y'all as a couple. The time frame and repaying.
Yeah.
Those.
It took 7 years.
Yeah.
And I'd even told Emily, we had a little speech in our mind. We were cursing and rehearsing. We knew what we were going to tell this banker, right? Because we knew we were going to get it paid off, and we were getting close. And when we finally get that note, we're going to put it on his desk and say, see, you don't know everything. And it was 4 months before we paid it off, the guy died.
No.
How selfish is that?
How rude. Can you believe he did that?
Absolutely inappropriate.
Cut off at the pass.
That's such a good story. Oh my gosh.
So you go through all that, and where that evolved to, and to what that evolves into today. Kind of take us through that all the way up to Shark Farmer.
Obviously, we were looking for something, in my mind, the identity crisis again. I didn't want to go off to a job because I wanted to be a farmer, and I didn't think I could do both. It's hard to explain, but that's what I was thinking. But I thought if I could be an outfitter, I'm still on the farm, I could still call myself a farmer. People would think I'm still a farmer, then that's okay. We happen to live in a very good area for white-tailed deer, and the timing was perfect because the outdoor media was focused on this area. So we put some ads in the back of magazines and just, I don't know, what do we get? 100 calls.
Oh, at least.
Nonstop. She was so mad we had a house phone back then. She was so mad I put the house phone number on.
Our listeners are going, what's the house phone?
And we lined them up. I mean, we hardly vetted them, really. I mean,
we didn't vet them.
We're just like,
damn bit.
Okay, we'll line up as many as we can hold. And we did. And that first year, oh my goodness, we had some yahoos. I mean, we had people, we had a guy call one time, 4 a.m. in the morning, and calls Rob because his wife had bought him new hunting boots. And he put his hunting boots on that morning, and he was a big guy, and he couldn't get them laced right. And he called Rob to come help him put his boots on. At
4 a.m. while I was in bed.
Yeah.
2 miles away.
And he had a flip phone at the time, and I remember him flipping it shut and like throwing it. And I was
all
like,
dramatic.
What is the deal? And he's just like, yeah, this idiot, he's never coming back. And it was just kind of that, it just continued that first year. People were doing things they shouldn't. And it was a learning curve for us because, again, like Rob's like, I never looked at it like, the neighbors are going, this isn't these yahoos from out of state. This is Rob Sharkey. This is people he has hunting that are screwing up. And we realized then that it was so much more than we thought it was going to be. It wasn't just about lining up people, making money.
We'd actually made the decision to not do it again. And we had 4 guys left, and those guys were fantastic. And when they left, they called back about 2 weeks later, and they're like, listen, if we bring good people out like us and not a bunch of half-wits, will you try it one more year? And that was 21 years ago.
We've never advertised again. It has always been originated from those word of mouth. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it ended up being great. But boy, that first year we weren't sure.
Well, and I knew we would learn a lot more today, of course, in this conversation, but that's not something I knew we had in common. And that's that we have a dove lease. How long have you had it?
Oh, for probably over 30 years.
Yeah, so I bet we could tell stories all night long.
For sure.
Because we'll be in the heat of plant or harvest, and I guess what season would it be?
Well, it doesn't really matter to them, kind of like their people sometimes. They just call.
And so we'll be trying to get a planter through or a combine through, and they've just got their trailer and truck right in the center of the lane. They've unloaded hours before, and that's where they sit. We can't get through. We can't get around them.
Yeah. There's a lot of training because in their defense, they don't want to park in the field. They don't want to park in the road. So obviously the field entrances are great. But there's some training to do, and it takes a while. And the landowners that we deal with are, pretty forgiving one time, but we better educate the guys after that.
Well, and I think they've got the same attitude when they first started coming that, they just looked out in a field and it was like like public ground or something. Like it didn't occur to them that you don't drive on it or that anybody and their brother couldn't just cross that. Like they never really looked at it as private land that somebody's taking care of farming. They just had absolutely no concept. So if they left a rut in the field, it didn't faze them. Like they didn't understand that until we said, well, what if somebody drove through your finely manicured lawn? Same thing. Right. And then they got it. So after those first couple years, people really understood, okay, like we were really like careful about it.
Mm-hmm. Right. I bet y'all have a similar story as this, but Jay's rolled up on a few fellas hunting that weren't supposed to be there, and they dropped his own name to him.
What? That never happens.
Jay Norman said I could be here. And he had some more fun choice words that we don't use on this podcast. And said, well, that's a pretty funny thing because that's who you're talking to right now. So
not uncommon.
What are the ground rules on this podcast? Because we say anything. We say all the big words, the big cuss words, but you guys don't. How'd that decision get made?
We don't say all the big cuss words.
I'm trying to talk here.
We didn't necessarily want to be prude-ish. This is how it occurred. Lily, our 9th grader, her entire basketball team listens religiously. And so in my mind, envisioning, 10 to 12 ninth grade girls listening, I just didn't, I wanted to stay pretty on the up and up for them. Now, in our talk last night, you guys know the type of language that we like to use. Jay's a potty mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about it a long time after that phone call about your potty mouth.
I love those words, but I try to keep it clean on here. You could use them and it would be fine.
This is actually really funny because this is like Rob and I do not argue. We don't fight. We never have. We just don't. But so we can count on one hand probably, 4 or 5 times that we've actually fought, like raised our voices at each other. And so I have to laugh when he said, you guys aren't cussing, because when he started his podcast a few years ago, he was probably on episode maybe 6 or 7. And we had taken our daughter, Anita, to Cincinnati, where she was going to spend a month dancing at the Cincinnati Ballet. And so we were dropping her off and we were coming home. And we got to talking about the podcast. And I had a huge problem with it because I wasn't I didn't use bad language. I just didn't. And I was in a community Bible study at the time, and I was a leader. And so I had 15 women in my group that I prayed for every day, talked to every day, knew their families. We all knew each other from either homeschooling or church or whatever. And so when he started his podcast and he was dropping words, I had a serious,
the big
serious
ones,
problem with it. And he couldn't understand it.
I
love the big ones. And the big ones are so effective.
You bring up a question for me, what you were saying there, but you brought up your podcast, which obviously is a huge deal for y'all, and we'll get more into that. And you brought up that y'all very seldom fought. And I know you told us a story about you're in the outfitting business, and you started the podcast, and you started Shark Farmer, and everything started growing, and y'all had a conversation that turned into a fight about transitioning from being in the outfitting business into the podcast and the Shark Farmer. Explain that to us, or tell us that story.
Well, I think that was the fight she was talking about, but it really went back to, she's always been really supportive of what I've done. Like even, the failures with the hogs, starting the outfits. I mean, she's always had my back. This was different. She was telling me that she didn't want me to do it, didn't agree with it. And I felt fairly passionate about it. If I did one thing right, it was the timing on the podcast. Our timing was impeccable. I mean, the very first episode we had, within like a few hours, we had 1,000 downloads. That doesn't happen now. The only reason is because we tapped into Ag Twitter, and the timing, it was novel. Nobody really knew what a podcast was. So we timed it perfectly, and I really had a feeling that it could turn into something. And she wasn't on board, and that made me upset. And she was upset that I wasn't listening to her. So it's both like we were pulling on a rope. And then something came to my mind. It's like if we just both drop the rope, then we could not argue so much. And it's a philosophy that I've really pushed. And, I've been thinking about getting it on T-shirts.
Oh, gosh.
Hold on, Rob. No, hold on. Let me get my pen. And so it's drop a.
It could be drop a or drop the rope.
Okay, drop the, and then what was the last?
Rope. You gotta. It's like an imaginary rope when you're fighting that you're pulling against each other.
Rob, do you mind if I use that on our podcast?
Well, I mean, it's kind of ours,
Okay.
Yeah.
We could probably let her put it on a shirt, though.
I mean, we get 20%. I'm just going to say.
I do want to tell y'all that he actually did that on our conversation last night and then pretended like he had invented it and was going to make T-shirts. And my little girl, perfectly timed, walked in and said hi to them and was wearing her Drop the Rope T-shirt.
Oh, did she?
It was such a cool, shut up. salt.
Jess and I, we're pretty big on stuff that's.
I thought you were going to say we fight a lot. I thought you were going to be like, Jess and I, we fight a lot.
Let's just say our 5 were last week.
One of us needs to calm the hell down is all I'm telling you. And it's not Norman. But we're figuring it out.
But what I was going to say is we're really big in the train of thought. That's what's meant to be is meant to be. And where I was going with that, where you were talking about trying to make that decision when the podcast started growing about what to do with your outfitting business and having that conversation and that argument, and then what came out of that argument.
Well, even before we got to that, I think it's important to note that when things started to snowball past being a podcast, it was apparent that I could not do it all and farm. And the farming is the top priority. So we made a decision together that Emily was going to get involved. And she was actually, going to start editing. She became the producer of the XM show. And she's actually, if anybody's listened to it, she's actually a co-host of it. But once she got involved, that cured a lot of ills as far as what I didn't know what was going to happen. I know what I am. I'm a very creative person. But organizationalized, I'm horrible. And she helps incredibly on that. And she's just been a really good asset. But as far as like the outfitter, you go ahead and say what that's transitioned into.
Yeah, so we were traveling and Rob was going to speak. And so we were on the road and we were having a conversation. And I told him, I said, wow, this is really like we're going to be traveling a ton now and you're going to be speaking. And, the outfitter takes a lot of time. And how are we going to do it all? And we literally said, I wonder if it's time to let the outfitter go. But we didn't want to because we've been doing it so long. We had so many neat friendships and great memories, and we always wanted it for the kids, if they wanted to take it over someday, that they could run it the way they wanted. And so that was hard. And so we were literally having this conversation, and our cell phone rings. And we almost didn't get it because, we were having heart to heart. And we answered it anyway. And it was one of our hunters. And they're like, don't hang up on us. We have this crazy idea. What would it take for just our group to come and you look at what you're making with all the groups and we would like to just have it be us? So from a business standpoint, it was a great deal because it was just going to be one group, would still be making good money on it. And, it used to be that we'd have, 70 hunters in. And so we'd have a group in and then I'd be flipping all the rooms, washing everything, cleaning the whole place, and literally having the next group come in the next half a day. It was a lot of work. I was up like all night some nights getting ready for the next group and then schooling. And it was just a lot. And so when they said that, we're like, okay, we'll think about it. And so we got back to them and we said, yeah, that's a great business decision. We love you guys. You're some of our closest friends. Absolutely. And so that has been a huge blessing because these guys have been coming out for so long. We don't have to take them around and show them fields. We don't have to guide them. Right. We just have the place for them to come. So it's been really good.
Can I just stop for just a second because I believe in full transparency with our podcast? I thought outfitter was like clothing.
Well, I think that's how most people see them. The definition of what we do as an outfitter is we lease ground for hunting and then we sublease for other people. Yes, I guess.
That's we go and spend time with them.
But for years, I thought that outfitter on your logo was like clothing, and I'd never seen the clothing.
Oh, okay.
There's no way we would sell clothing. Yes.
I thought that y'all did. I thought y'all just did hunting, like jackets and vests and pants and so you guys don't sell hunting pants.
No.
I'm dead. I can.
We'll give
I thought what y'all Wouldn't you like in our community when you say like an outfitter? When other people say outfitter, doesn't that mean they sell clothing?
I think it's different here. I think people know what an outfitter is as far as what we do here. But like if you go into a city, I'm sure they're thinking Urban Outfitters or American Outfitters or whatever.
I cannot believe. I think we need to start back to exchanging our names.
Just re-go.
I'm dead. I mean, I cannot believe.
Well,
I can't believe.
What do you call your dove hunting?
We say our dove lease.
Just a lease. Yeah, but like where y'all go out and like grow a cover crop or, a crop for them and set up stands and do all that. All we do is flag a field and put it on a map and give them a tag and go show them the field and turn them loose. We don't really spend any time with them, so to speak, or bait anything. It's just all off of what's
I just can't believe, because I always wonder like what's going to come out of the episode, and I just now learned that you don't sell clothes.
No.
Rob, she's for a box of clothes for
I'm
a while.
dead. I'm so dead. I know, and I was like, I wonder why they don't put pictures of the clothes on their website. I just cannot believe this. I'm going to need a little moment. I'm going to need a moment.
No, believe me, the T-shirt thing is, we made a decision. We just didn't want to sell T-shirts, and the people that do, fantastic. I'm happy for you. It just wasn't for us. And I don't know if you ever watch South Park, but there's an episode where Cartman buys an amusement park and then that's failing, it's going broke. And the second he says, well, I'm not going to let anybody else in, everybody wants in. So the second we said, we're not going to sell any T-shirts, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, M sent us T-shirts before we barely even knew them. I wear that thing every week at least. I love that T-shirt.
Wears both of them.
Well, it has orange on the sleeve and I put stuff on the sleeve.
So
wears both of them.
I've got a question.
Don't do the reach. Don't do the reach.
I'm trying to keep up because Jay's got such a good voice. I don't want to. I want to keep up myself. So, go ahead with your next question.
What I was going to say is, you mentioned the podcasts and the shows and stuff, and so take us back to where all that evolved from and kind of how that started. I know you mentioned Twitter earlier, and I know it's tied to that. So tell us that story.
Well, yes, I started on Ag Twitter, and it was kind of like the Wild West of social media at the time. Nobody quite knew how to figure it out or anything. And I had my electricity went out one Christmas, and from Christmas to New Year's, we were out of juice. And then I was sitting in my house alone with just a little generator that would keep the furnace and the refrigerator running. That's about it. So when I'm by myself, my mind is going nuts. And I start thinking of weird things to send messages to my power company. And I started tweeting them. And
they were hilarious. I mean, like he would do like a dark picture with just like the eyeballs showing and blinking. And like, this is me with no electricity. And then he was blinking, like we had our dog fixed. And so she had the cone of shame around her. And so then he started blaming them for her surgery and that he couldn't take care of her because he didn't have any electricity. And I mean,
they were weird.
You had Mr. Burns from Simpson.
But they trended. They trended nationally, and I picked up a bunch of followers. So I had a Twitter following. And then with the outfitter, we had a lady come down that had a huge hunting podcast. And as she was talking about it, I was like, all right, we can do this. And we could talk about hunting stories because I have a bunch of hunting stories that I think are hilarious. And we did. She got us started on that. And I don't know, the first couple, they weren't good at all. But when we did Farmer, that's when it really took off. Because with the hunting, if you weren't there and you don't know the people, it's really dumb. But everybody could relate to the farmer.
Yeah. You got to be there, or you have to really love the hunter to be so happy for him to join in on the enthusiasm.
We had a story about a guy that shot a buck's wiener off. I thought that was the most hilarious thing, but nobody liked it. Wasn't very funny for the buck. I get that. Yes.
Well, it just seems like audio gold to me, though. I just don't know. So, do you remember who the first farmer was?
Carl Armstrong. Yeah, it's a guy that I've known on Twitter forever. And for probably 10 years, we have had a running jokes about hitting each other's moms and, getting the whole mom joke thing. It's just the dumbest thing. But I interviewed him, and that thing it went crazy.
Oh, I'll have to find him.
So that was 3 or 4 episodes on your podcast. You interview the first farmer. Mm-hmm. And so where does that goes from there? You just continue down following the ag line of podcast, or where does that take you?
Well, I think you realize too that when he thought the hunting would be funny and it wasn't, he realized what he was really passionate for, because he's passionate about farming. That's what he's wanted to do. That's what he's fought for. And with the outfitter, it's fun. You have people, you're part of their lives. They look forward to coming, and that's fun. Giving them a good time to hear about their conversations about their being here is a good time, but it's not what he's passionate about. And I think the passion really showed through right from the very beginning of giving farmers who normally wouldn't be heard a platform to tell about their farm, because everybody has a story. So you never run out of them. I mean, everyone has a good story. We didn't want to hear from the politicians or the president of every group or really well-spoken people. We wanted to hear from the average Joe what they've been through. What are their struggles? What are their triumphs? And we love it. You love doing that. So that came through.
That reminds me a lot about how much Jay just really likes talking about his feelings on here. It's just
I could tell.
He's really passionate about really dissecting the thought processes behind the emotion of it. We love y'all's podcast. Every time we travel, we have it on the entire time. My favorite thing is when in the beginning, when someone's talking and Rob goes, whoa, 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 whoa. Go, you got to go back, go back, go back. He disarms every guest immediately, gets them right where he wants them.
No.
I'm going to try it. Rob, you start talking and we'll do it. Rob, what was your childhood like?
What?
Whoa, 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 whoa. Don't start at that age. Go back earlier. You're missing so many parts, you idiot.
That is really annoying, isn't it? You got to remember, at the time, there was such a giant hole in ag media that it was like I said, the timing was perfect. We were talking about things that nobody else was talking about. I mean, you know ag media, right? You talk about your weather, you talk about your markets, you talk about maybe what somebody's doing different on your farm. That was it. Podcast came along. I mean, all the rules were off. And I can tell you, I mean, when we were growing and we were getting fairly big, the ag media did not like us at all. Really? And we were a joke. Yes, we were made fun of until, well, we're still made fun of. But what really got them is we started taking the advertisers, big advertisers. And then when they would go and try to hit up advertisers, they're like, you know what? I think we need to really focus on podcast. And then all the ag media started their own podcast, but they ran them like traditional ag media. So they didn't go anywhere. It's been kind of fun to chip away at that Goliath.
Right.
So you have the podcast, and obviously that it blew up like crazy, and that led you to now an XM radio show and a TV show. So tell us about that. I mean, that's got to be phenomenal to look back and see where you're at there.
Well, so as the podcast got bigger, and we were approached by several media companies then, which originally they didn't like us, but then when they realized, okay, people want to hear this stuff, then we started being approached by them, and they wanted us to come on board with them. And so we were excited. We're like, well, okay. And so we had like 3 eraser boards out in the lodge, and we put up a couple companies on each one, and we put the pros and cons of going with each one. And then we traveled and we met with each one of these companies, and they laid out what their vision was and what they thought they could do for us, what we could do for them, and how we could work with them. So we did that, and the overriding theme that we kept hearing was, I think that they were worried about what we were doing. They wanted us to kind of swallow us in, to kind of control what we were doing. But then the thing that we kept hearing was, we really just, how would you say it?
They kept saying that they needed someone like us to compete with the Hefty brothers, because the Hefty brothers, Hefty Brother Media is just Brian and Darren Hefty, and they're incredibly successful, but they don't fit the norm of the other ag media companies, and they were getting all the sponsors. They're doing very well. So the more we heard that, we went to ourselves.
We said, well, why don't we go see the Hefties? And so we did. Wow. We went out to see the Hefties and talked with them. They're so busy. We got about 10 minutes with them. And we talked about what we could do for them, what they could do for us, how we could partner with them. And that's how the XM show was born, was partnering with the Hefties.
Whose idea was that?
What's that?
Whose idea? Rob or Ann?
Oh, Rob's.
No, it was collective.
No,
it was collective.
Oh, no.
Yes, I do remember her she raised her eyebrows pretty heavy when I said, we're going to take an 8-hour drive out for probably a 10-minute conversation, but it paid off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing with them is, we're like, all right, we'll give you the airtime. We'll take care of it. But you're on your own. You're producing it, and you're either going to sink or swim on your own, which we really liked.
Yeah, that was the thing. They were going to be very hands-off. They didn't give us a list of things we could or couldn't do, like a lot of the other companies were doing. And we loved that, because we wanted to make it our own. We wanted to create we had a vision, and we wanted to get our own guests, and we wanted to be in complete control of it. And that's what they wanted. They didn't have time to micromanage us. They're like, here, this is how you do it. We'll help you get set up and go. And in fact, it was so much so that we had to kind of sit back sometimes and be like, why don't we hear some input from them?
Yes, good or bad.
Why don't we ever hear, And
what year was that?
2018.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we ran two full years with them. And then we're basically set up on our own after that, learning the 2 years. So we started going direct with RFD. Yeah, the Hefties, we always owe them a huge debt, because they're the ones that really got us started. But
they believed in you.
Yeah.
We didn't have to sort of say, hey, this is what we want to do. They believed in them from the start. They're like, we love it. Right. Do it and go. Whereas there were so many times with other companies were like, well, this is our vision. This is what we're seeing. And they're like, well, that hasn't been done.
Yeah, exactly.
That's never been done. So why would you do something like that? They were always trying to put Rob in a box that they thought that he should be in. And the Hefties didn't.
So you go from near bankruptcy to a podcast to an XM radio show and now a TV show. Mm-hmm. I guess number one, in any crazy thought, did you ever see it going this far? And then number two, where do you think it's going from here?
No, never even imagined it would lead to this. I had dreams of grandeur of the podcast doing really well. Just becoming like a marquee ag podcaster. I had dreams of that, right? But to where it's come to right now, I wouldn't have even envisioned it when we started. So it's been nice. It's humbling when you sit back and you think of it. But I think what helps us is Emily and I aren't that interesting. But what we have is we have guests every single day. And we are very good at interviewing people. We're very good at trying to get their story out. So, it's endless. We don't have to come up with content every day. I don't know how some of these people do it. Some of these big ag social media people that have to put out their own content every day, I mean, they must just be chugging at it all the time. And they do such a fantastic job, which is why we want to interview them. But yes, so we get that a lot. He's like, are you running out of stories? Not even close.
Right.
And along that line, do you see your storyline changing with the world the way it is, or with ag community getting smaller? Do you see that storyline changing, or y'all going any other direction?
You know, the podcast, the radio show are very specific. They're business to business podcasts. I'm talking to farmers. You know, the TV show is more rural, but yes, ag's so small that the challenge is getting out of it, which is why we've been doing the podcast with Leslie Kelly. That's more of a consumer to farmer podcast, which is incredibly difficult to get something that's interesting enough that both sides will listen and get something out of it.
Right.
Well, and probably that's some of the main things facing ag today is the stuff you're talking about on there that, you know, is going to propel us through to the mainstream to where we can get our message out. And I think that's what's neat about what y'all do is that, you know, you laid the groundwork early on to be able to transition in ways that can help us for sure.
Right. We're just getting started.
And we look at people that are doing it. I mean, we study Derek Josie and how he's getting into these big cities. I mean, we study Meredith Bernard. I mean, how are they getting outside of that bubble? And we try to pick up some hints from them and go that way because, the much bigger audience is outside of our industry.
And we try to stay positive. I mean, that's the big thing for us is we really try to stay positive with what we do to give people a voice that, you know, to encourage people because there's room for everybody. I mean, we have people on that have other podcasts and we always let them at the end of every show or toot their own horn. Like, okay, are you doing a podcast? Or there's been a lot of times where we've encouraged somebody to get started. Like they just needed that little push to get going. And it's like everybody has that story to tell and it's endless. Like there's not a roof on it. So we're always like, tell your story. And more farmers are telling their story. And it just never gets old.
Yeah, you've just turned into a genuine bully on that front, haven't you? Have you been bullying me in my life at all?
Well,
her sweet little darling giggle. I told this story on our other podcast. I think it's okay to retell it here, but it had been laid on my heart to maybe start a book a few months ago. But as I do with everything, I kind of dragged my feet. It had come down to this one day. I think it kind of combined with me telling you guys the other day where I needed to get some truth out to Jay so that I could hear it and watch it and see that it didn't do the damage that I thought that it would do, that the dark had convinced me it would do. When that finally came out, I just kept asking God, I know this isn't about Jay and I. This is something else. Like, what is it? It can't be about what I think it is. It's something more. And I just kept feeling like he was saying, this is the book. I'm trying to pull enough emotion out of this situation for you to see that this book needs to get written. And I was like, oh, fine. I'll take a nap. When I wake up from the dumb nap, I will write the dumb book. Just leave me alone. He was absolutely harassing me that afternoon. So I say I'll take like a 20-minute nap and I'll wake up. I'll sit to my laptop and I'll start the book. So I lay down. Well, every time my alarm went off, I would just snooze. And this little 20-minute nap turned into like a 4-hour event because as soon as I got off the couch, I was going to have to start this book that I was terrified to start. So I'm laying there trying to get back to sleep after, the 19th snooze and my phone dings. And it's M. M and I talk often, but we don't talk like this. And she says, hey, girl, so this is what I'm thinking. There are very few people who can wordsmith in such a way that it reaches you and touches every emotion. You are one of those people. You should be an author, just saying. And so I couldn't get off the couch, so God sent M in to get me off of the couch. And it was just something so powerful. The timing of it was so incredible. And it, he had already been laying Rob and Emma my heart for our podcast here. And that day it just solidified that he is having the four of us do life together. If you were who he sent in that day to get me off of that couch to do something that's pretty important to me in my life right now. So I wanted to tell you thank you. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that you're doing this for. And so it's just a big deal. And it was a big deal that day, and it still is.
Aw. Well, it was so funny that day because Rob and I were watching one of your stories or something, and we were having a conversation about you. And Rob actually said, you should just tell her what you just said. Like, he gave me the oomph to say it, because we were discussing like how you wordsmith, how you put things together, and how funny you can be, and yet there's other times where like it just touches you, like you bring people into what you're saying, and it's a gift. Not everybody can do that. And that's how that came to be, was that text, because we're like, yeah, we were having a conversation. Why wouldn't we share it?
And the yin and yang that you guys have together as you do this podcast together is just hilarious. How you're just so upbeat and energetic, and Jay's kind of laid back like a dead fly. I mean, it's just fantastic. I mean, you guys play off each other so well. And even your other one where you get together with those other ladies at the Huddle House, some passion and emotion, and it's fun to listen to.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, if Jay weren't a good sport, none of it could be possible or exist if he weren't a good sport.
I'll take it. I'm just hanging out over here. I want to say that I admire y'all for what you've done. I mean, for taking the risk that you've taken to step out and put yourself out in front. I mean, our thing that we've done, it really stands out to me that how you've stretched yourself out and done that. And I guess that leads me to say you stepped out, and so you had to have some faith. And we talked a little bit about faith last night. And I just wonder if y'all could tell us a little bit about that process.
Well, I tell you, they talk about the man of the household being the spiritual leader. And yes, I grew up in a certain religion that was driven maybe not so much by the Bible, but by the church law. And Emily, she even converted when we got married, but she was always kind of like a gentle hand on the back. It's like, you need to be going more towards the Bible. So it was, I think, when our oldest was going to be, he was going to take a step in the church that was fairly significant. We decided that we were going to leave and go to a church that's just strictly no dogma, no politics, just out of the Bible. And
that was huge because Rob's family was not on board.
My dad.
I should say that. Yeah. His dad was not on board because his grandpa was one of the, they helped build the church and they were part of the church. And so for him to leave, in fact, we even considered not even making the step to leave the church at that time because we thought it would be too hard on him. And it was a big deal, huge. And so we struggled with that it probably took us 4 years to leave. Mm-hmm. And when we finally did, we had been searching those last couple years to find just the right church, and we found it, which we traveled 45 minutes to go to church. Yeah. But we open our Bibles there, and it's scripture-based, and we found a home there, and we love it. So yeah, our spiritual journey has been a struggle, just finding where we fit, where the kids, and it's ever changing, youth groups and things the kids are doing and how active, I was active in community Bible study for years, and they had a program for the kids there. We homeschooled and we could go. And there's been so many beautiful things over the years that we've been a part of that we've really, really loved. But the biggest thing for us was always wherever we were going to go to church, we wanted to do it together. And we wanted to do this together and be able to talk with the kids together and have it be a big part of our lives. So yeah, it hasn't been an easy journey, but I think we finally, found our place in that. So
I think one of the common themes just talking to you guys today is that you've really put yourselves through some really tough situations. You don't really seem to shy away from tough. Pretty constant theme with you guys.
That's because we make a lot of mistakes.
I had one more question. In all the people that you've interviewed, kind of a last question, in all the people that you've interviewed and their circumstances and situations, what is one word or thought that you've learned or something that stuck with you that you've taken through and applied to your life? Authentic,
I would say, because we've had some incredible stories, and we try to work with people, and we can tell when people are nervous. We can tell when people are trying to prepare too much, and we try to work with. But some people are very concerned about how they come off, and they don't let the walls down. And sometimes they have these amazing stories, but the walls just don't come down because they're concerned that this might look bad or that might look bad. And those never do as well. But interviews where people actually let their walls down, show warts and all, those are the ones that always go over really big. And those are the ones that are my favorite. So yeah, I have learned, because you don't want to go against the grain, right? And I get that. I don't either. I think about to times where I was involved in Farm Bureau and stuff I didn't agree with. I would kind of agree with because I didn't want to go against the grain. Just wasn't being myself. But you always respect those people that just speak their mind. You might not like them immediately, but over time, those are the people that you'll end up respecting. Those are the people that will always be telling you the way they feel.
Mm-hmm.
Emily?
It's been a process for me because I was I've been able to stand back and listen to people's story and try to understand where a person's coming from now, and look at maybe where their background was, or what's happened in their family, or just where do they get their moral compass, why they make the decisions that they do, their great story and their farm story or their family or whatever. And I've tried to be a lot less black and white about things and understand that everybody has a different story and they come to a different place at a different time. And I love that, because I used to really think things really needed to be a certain way. You really needed to believe, you really needed to follow a certain path, and there's a right and wrong, and there is. But in, helping Rob and interviewing people and hearing where thhere coming from, it's made me a lot more compassionate towards people, I think. And I just love to hear people's story now. I love to hear where, how they got to the place they're at and why they believe what they do. And it's just been a huge growth for me. I think I just had a certain, a way that I thought people should talk about things. And I think that's why I had a hard time at the beginning when he started the podcast. I'm like, you shouldn't say that. You can't say that way, and it's really helped. I don't know if I'm coming across right.
Of course you are. I'm just trying not to interrupt you. It reminds me of that saying, you don't hear things the way they are, you hear things the way you are. And we all have just such a set of ticks and rules and guidelines that we use to process any type of information that we take in. And you're right. In the beginning, if you would have just kind of proceeded the rest of the time with that set, it wouldn't have gone as well. You had to stretch and you had to season. You had to, I always say, just get out of the way and let God stretch you into who you are today, which is an incredible person. Even when we were talking about language, and I was on a podcast, and I felt a lot more comfortable, and so I did use a couple of words, and it really bothered me. I wasn't in charge of editing, and so I was actually crying. I get really hard on myself, and I was crying. I was talking to my mom, and I said, "Mom, I used a couple of words and I'm embarrassed." And she said, "Jess, maybe somebody was waiting for someone to be talking about God and use language. And that's when they told God that's who they would finally listen to, is if somebody was real enough that, would kind of bridge the gap between the two sides. And so now I always look at it like that, and I think how I would describe that for you, Emily, is reframing. I love it, how you're kind of like taking a different look at it from a different angle. Maybe we think the show's not good, or it's not going well, or the interview's not going well, but there is we just have to trust that this was all anointed and all ordained, and he wanted this out there for a reason. And so maybe we don't see it, or we don't hear it, or we don't feel it, but there is someone out there that's going to benefit greatly from the shows that y'all don't like are probably some people's absolute favorite shows.
Mm-hmm. Which one of your shows did the best, and were you surprised about it?
No, we took a couple of weeks, went away from each other on this topic, and tried to pray over a guest. And when we came back together, we both had the same name, Jason Norton. He's the cowboy pastor. He's a good friend of ours now, but he wasn't then. And he's the cowboy pastor here at the church, stone's throw from our home. And that show went bonkers. I mean, bonkers. And that show is called Preachers. It's PPP, Police, Preachers, and Penitentiary. And he just had the most incredible story that we just wanted to get out. And he is authentic, and he just blew it out of the water. That's our best show, our best numbers show for sure.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That's one of your like when you're talking to friends and they say they want to catch up, or maybe you're just meeting them and they say, where should we start? Do you have a show that you point them towards?
Our biggest one isn't our best in my mind. It was good. Uh-huh. The Tillable interview, the CEO of Tillable. Right. But honestly, and I don't think it's just because it's fresh in my mind, but we just interviewed the guy that was the assistant coach with the Humboldt Broncos when they had the bus accident that killed 13 of the players, or 16 of the players.
16, yeah.
To me, I think that was probably one of the best.
Okay.
I haven't got to hear that.
No,
I'm looking for
we're pulling up our phones right now. Well, we need to go, you guys. It's been nice talking to y'all. We have something to do.
Yeah,
bye.
It's that humor that's funny. It's the you're able to do the sarcasm and just pull it off, but yet be serious about it. That's some funny shit right there.
Yes, I'm just joking. I don't really want to close my laptop and pull your podcast up. It's just all jokes. All jokes. Hey, I don't want us to leave without talking about mental health and tips and tricks that we do, practical things that we do to help fill our cup during this pandemic. And so, do you have anything that your go-tos on cup fillers and ways that you can kind of renew your spirit that you do on the regular that you could share with our listeners?
So probably my biggest way to relax and sort of shut off my brain is kayaking. And my friend and I go kayaking, and we just go for miles and talk for hours. And it's kind of a way to just distress. Like, nobody bothers me. I don't have to answer anybody about anything work related or kid related. And it's just really nice. We get out there on the water and everything just kind of disappears, and we solve all the world's problems as we, paddle along. And that, and riding my horse, because I feel like I can get on my horse and take off, and I can pray out loud. I can organize my day. I can do whatever I need to do. And I think those two things keep me sane. They just, I can either shut off my brain, or I can sort of organize as I go and feel like I can come back and be a better mom, better wife, doing those things.
That's incredible. Just for a second, I'm going to need a kayak and a horse and a saddle.
In that order.
She was writing on her hand a while ago. I think that's what she was writing.
Tomorrow.
What about you, Rob?
She needs those tomorrow.
Yeah. I do have things that I do to relax, but it's one thing that has been frustrating is I've especially with my co-host of the What the Farm, Leslie Kelly, who help start a foundation, the Do More Foundation, that wants to take the stigma off mental health. I've always tried to promote people that are talking about mental health, that have, ways to try to deal with it or have struggled with it. It's by far, by none, the biggest blowback I've ever gotten on social media is talking about mental health. It's not ready to be, the stigma is going to be there for quite a while. And I mean, people just are ticked about it. So I don't even like talking about like what I do, because I never want to be misunderstood as someone that thinks that they are a mental health expert, because I am not. All I've ever did was give a platform for people that either did know about it or did struggle about it. So it's, the mental health thing is definitely a pet peeve of mine, because it's, you bring it up, you try to support it, and boy, the hatred talking about mental health is probably like none other on social media.
Well, that's interesting. That really is.
Yeah. I think it goes hand in hand, though, with everything else we're dealing with, the influence that you have. Our listeners and our community, they're a different breed. And so when they hear, what is something that you use to fill your cup, they're going to be like, gosh, that's a great idea. I should go buy it, go buy a kayak. Whenever we have whenever we have the haters or the pushback from sad folks that aren't interested in filling their cups or aren't interested in growing through their mental health issues, that's what we say just isn't our audience, And so I think it's always helpful, because I think a lot of times we get stuck in talking about the mental health, but not trying to add a little bit of help with what works for us. Because to me, when you are struggling with something, I think it's so helpful to find somebody that struggled with the same thing and successfully has walked through it and gotten to the other side. And that's the premise of our entire podcast. And so when I ask you, or when Jay asks you, like, how do you deal with it? It's just one of those throwing one more piece into the pile of, here's another idea that might help somebody that's listening.
Yeah, definitely. No, I ride the motorcycle. That's what gives me my zen.
I need a motorcycle.
You can put the saddle and the kayak on the motorcycle.
Do you see how I had to have you say it just so now I can write it on my list?
She said that whole thing to get you to say motorcycle. There we go. So the next story, Rob, I'll take the answer when she starts.
Do either of you, this is not for nothing, but do either of you use a mountain bike? And what quality mountain bike do you use?
No and no, I'll answer for you.
I think the mountain bike probably helps us the most with our stress and makes us better spouses to each other. It helps us drop the rope.
Speak closer to the mic. Yeah, and going back, Rob, too, to what you were saying, because I think I know we're going long, but I think that's a wonderful conversation later on to have. But it's like, we were raised, if you're not licensed or you're not certified, kind of shut up, because what if you say something that's going to misdirect someone in the wrong direction? And I think in this generation, we're seeing that caused a lot of us to really stop talking about it, because you don't want to try to help because you don't want to help in the wrong way. But I really just do think for the stigma to come off of it, it needs to be like, hey, we're not licensed, but we're here and we can listen. And how much help does it to get it out? Like you say, going kayaking and getting all of those words out. Just being an ear is so huge. And I jumped on Instagram one of the first times and was watching a real live anxiety attack occur. And I had never seen it except in my own life. Therefore, I thought I was the only person on earth that had anxiety attacks. And so the power of witnessing one other person on earth going through something, which now made me not the only person, it just was a game changer. I mean, even for you, Rob, to say that you did go through that identity crisis, and what you do to push through it and to clear your head, I think those are really helpful.
Yeah, and I cut my teeth on Twitter, right? Which is a nasty medium to where you get Kevlar skin because you just write it off. And if somebody says something or somebody's that way, I've gotten to where I just write them off, or I just want to unload both barrels on them. But then, I have Emily, Leslie said it too. It's like the people that are making fun of mental health are the people that probably are suffering the worst from it. So then that ticks me off because it's like, I just want to be mad and mean. And then I've got Emily over here trying to drag me to be nice.
Right. Emily, keep doing it.
I want to say thanks for y'all coming on here today and for what it means to us and for, really what it means to the farming community, which we're a huge part of, for what y'all are doing and the road you've taken and how you've gotten there. I think it's a really amazing story, and I think it's a benefit to everyone to hear it. And I admire you for the risk you've taken and for the things you do every day. And Rob, I admire you most for Drop the Rope and bringing that to
beautiful,
us today.
Really. There's something to it. I think when we all really just get off of here and actually think about it, I mean, it's stellar.
It's beautiful in its simplicity. I mean, it's just, I'm proud of it. I'm glad you guys can recognize the power of something so simple as those few words. Dropping
the rope.
Yeah.
Well, you've changed your life.
One life at a time, Rob. That's what you're after. One life at a time.
Thank y'all for giving us this time.
No, absolutely. You guys are great people. You're doing a great thing. So more people need to listen to you and your honesty with your relationships and that. It's impressive to see, especially a couple in agriculture, because we are a little stubborn, to be so open and honest about stuff. So keep it up.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you all very much.
Yep. Thank you. And thank you again for the role you've played in our podcast, our baby.
Both of you, for sure.
Both of you. Oh my gosh. We wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here without y'all. So thank you. It sounds so cool. Definitely are our kind of people.
Well, thank you guys too. Really appreciate the chance to be on your podcast.
Yeah, thanks guys. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
See y'all. Yeah, babe, what else you got?
I think that's it.
Well, as the song says, the road goes on forever and the party never ends.
I love you.
I love you too.
We sure appreciate y'all listening today. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can search for us, Moving On Podcast. That's 3 words. On Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We would love to hear from you. With ways you're figuring out how to drop the ropes in each of your own lives, and even ways that you're not, hell, that's just as entertaining to us. See you in a couple of weeks.